You're listening to a podcast of The Lounge with Keaton Nichols. Weekdays, 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. right here on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Marty Davidoff is on the line right now of E. Martin Davidoff and Associates. He is a CPA and tax attorney there in New Jersey, here to talk to us about what happens if the IRS comes knocking. Marty, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
No problem, man. I appreciate you taking the time out tonight. And an issue on Mondays, of course, we like to focus here on the lounge. We like to talk about money. We like to talk about finances and making sure that you have all your money and your finances in order, and helping give people the tools to make sure that that happens. And we had some questions over the weekend that had arisen about the IRS, and we wanted to talk with you this evening about some of those questions that we have. We've never actually we haven't really talked about the IRS. Marty, this is mostly a millennial-focused show, of course, and there's a lot of young people, 18 to 35, that are listening to this, including myself, who have a lot of questions about taxes, the IRS, and whether or not they can actually come after you.
Sure. Give me your question.
All right, because it can sometimes be a daunting task. I wanted to kind of start out with some real basic stuff here. Sometimes we hear about some of our famous celebrities that kind of get ensnared in IRS or tax, sort of struggles. Chris Tucker was one, Wesley Snipes, another one that I can think of as well. The number one question that I sort of had to start us off are, what are some reasons why the IRS might target you or contact you for any sort of reason? What are some reasons why the IRS might do that in the first place?
The IRS is going to contact you in one of two situations. One, you owe money. You filed tax returns and you said you owed money and you didn't pay it. Mm-hmm. So that's one situation, that you're dealing with the collection division of the IRS because you already owe money for that you've told them or you've been audited and owe money. So that's one reason they're going to contact you. A second reason they're going to contact you is you haven't filed returns. They say, you haven't filed returns. Mm-hmm. A third reason is they're going to adjust your income, either because they're going to audit you, they want to audit you, and there are 5 different things I can tell you if you get that dreaded letter for auditing. They're going to audit you, or they say, you know what, we looked at your tax return and you received a 1099 from this place that you worked and you didn't report it on your tax return, and we want you to report the income on your tax return, and they're going to give you a suggested bill for that and ask you to accept or reject that. So those are the 3 things. You owe money, you haven't filed, or they want to somehow adjust the tax that you owe through a notice or an audit.
Now, you mentioned another thing, and I said, hey, look, I want to know a lot of this stuff too, so pardon the basic questions here. When someone is audited, I actually had somebody ask me that the other day, and I had no answer for them. When you are audited, what exactly does that mean from the IRS? What exactly are they looking at?
Okay, well, there are several kinds of audits. Sometimes it's as simple as what is called a correspondence audit. They look at something on your tax return, and they say, we want you to prove your charitable contributions. Maybe through their software, they're saying that they look high. And there it's just a simple matter of sending them the documentation. If you send them the documentation, you get a no change. If you don't respond, that's when the trouble happens. So if you don't respond, they're going to say, okay, we're going to propose a disallowance of this. If you still don't respond, they're going to send something called a notice of deficiency that allows you to go to tax court. And then if you still don't respond, they assess the tax because you didn't appeal their decision. So the first thing they're going to do, the simplest type of audit, is they're looking at 1 or 2 deductions and sending you a letter. There are 2 kinds of in-person audits. They're called office audits, which are through tax compliance officers or revenue agents, or field audits through revenue agents. The office audit, they're saying, come on into our office, bring your records. Maybe you have a small business. Maybe you have some itemized deductions, and they're a little more complicated than what they could do through a correspondence audit, and they want you to come in and show all the materials. And that the office audit, unfortunately, is a very painful experience because these are usually people who are not well-trained to go back and forth. They don't have a lot of authority. They go by checklists, and if you have the item on the checklist, you're okay, and if you don't, they're going to disallow the audit. The important thing here for people to know is they should do a couple of things. If they get a notice about an audit, they should go to a tax professional and just say, were my deductions okay? Did my return, did I do anything that looks wrong to you? And basically have a pre-audit done with a professional, take an hour or so and have a meeting. If they think they're on solid ground and can't afford representation or don't want representation, they then just present that information to the IRS. And if you think you're right and the IRS says no, they give you very specific appeal rights. But don't be tricked. But sometimes they'll say, okay, if you disagree with our conclusion, write to me, the auditor, and I'll take a look at it. But in the same letter, they say, you need to appeal within 15 days or 30 days. And if you write to them and wait the 30 days to try to work it out with the auditor, you've lost your appeal rights. So what I would tell you that if you ever get, go through an audit, or even if you don't show up and they give you a tentative result, always file the appeal if you think you're right. And I have more, but the basics are, an audit is when they are looking at a deduction on the return, and they're saying, you're not entitled to that deduction, or we'd like you to prove that you're entitled to that deduction, and they give you an ability to do that. And there are lots of appeal rights, and what happens is when you ignore notices and you don't respond, you lose those appeal rights.
And so it becomes very important, and we're talking with Marty Davidoff of E. Martin Davidoff and Associates. It's very important that you respond to these sort of things. I've heard a lot of people who get notices like this or something like this in the mail, and Marty, I call it paralysis by analysis. Right, like you look at it and you don't know what to do. You're just looking like I don't know what to do. So therefore, I'm not going to do anything. Or I'm going to hide this away and pretend that it doesn't exist. That's bad advice.
That's the worst thing to do, of course, and particularly in the collections area. So for some of your clients who might owe money for one reason or another, either because they got paralyzed on the audit and the IRS says now you owe money, or because they didn't have enough money when they filed the return, and they filed the return, which is good because then you don't get late filing penalties.
Sure.
That's important. Even if you owe money, file the return.
Right.
And they say, okay, now we want to collect the money. And then people don't respond. They put it in a pile. I've had people give me 2 years' worth of unopened mail. And then they're very surprised where, a year and a half when they started getting this, the IRS levied money out of their account. They say, why did the IRS levy money out of the account?
Right.
And they say the answer is in those 35 letters and notices that you got before they did the levy, and basically said you have lots of appeal rights. You can always appeal a notice of intent to levy and go to the Office of Appeals. It's a very easy form to fill out. It's a one-page form, and so there are strategies for when you're dealing with collection, and there's strategies for when you're dealing with the initial audits or adjustments to your account.
Maybe another good question to ask is, how much trouble generally can people get into for this kind of thing? I mentioned there's a couple superstars, that sometimes we look at like Wesley Snipes, and we say, well, I don't want to be like Wesley Snipes, and now he's paying back all this money, and he maybe going to jail and serving prison time. Maybe some of that paralysis comes from people not knowing what some of the penalties are. But if you get one of these notices in the mail that says that you owe or that you need to talk to the IRS, they're not contacting you so that they can lock you up or anything, right? They want you to get these issues solved.
Well, most of the time that's the case. So let me address the first issue. How do you avoid an audit?
Yes.
File a complete and accurate return timely. Report all of your income so you can avoid IRS matching notices. If you get income, if you sell stock, or if you get income from a 1099, make sure you report it. Even if you sell stock at a loss, report the loss.
Right.
Keep good records and retain support of your documentation. And for those of you in small business, consider organizing as an S corporation or a partnership rather than just a single member LLC or a sole proprietorship, because they get audited less frequently. The S corps and partnerships for small business get audited less frequently than somebody doing as a sole proprietorship. So those are things you can do to avoid the audit. In terms of, here's where you get in real trouble. Criminal. You understate your income. You don't report all your income. That's criminal. And if you do that, the IRS could. They don't convict many, but they convict about 500 people a year, and they serve either jail time or they have fines. And so one is that if you underreport income, that's a problem. intentionally, and it has to be intentional. And the other is to intentionally, like, make up deductions. People make up deductions from time to time. If you do those two things, that's criminal, and that's beyond. That can be very troublesome.
We're speaking with Marty Davidoff of E. Martin Davidoff and Associates. He's a CPA and certified tax attorney. And talking about definitely some warnings or some dangers or just general information. I don't even mean to put it like that. General information that you need to know about the IRS if they come a calling or a come a knocking. That's another thing. Most especially in some poorer communities in the U.S., we know that sometimes financial scams can oftentimes be a way for folks to take advantage of other folks who have already been taken advantage of in many different ways. We also hear sometimes about fake IRS letters and things that are being sent. My mom tells me about this. She's a fraud investigator, and I hope she's listening right now because she's like standing up clapping right now, like, yes, talk about that fraud. Sometimes, fake letters or fake emails are being sent to you in some capacity. People that are faking, like they represent that they're an IRS officer or that they are somehow from the department, somehow representing the IRS in one shape or form. Are there ways to really be able to tell if it's legitimately the IRS or another organization contacting you trying to scam you?
There are. First of all, people should be aware of the IRS website, www.irs.gov.
Yes.
And on that website, if you research scams, you can see them all. But I'm going to give you a couple of things.
Okay.
For example, the IRS is never going to call to demand immediate payment over the phone.
Right.
Okay? They're not going to call and email you to verify your identity by asking personal and financial information. They're not going to do that. They're not going to ask that you pay over the phone with a credit card or a debit card. They're not going to require you to use a specific payment method like, a green dot card. All right? They're not going to threaten to immediately bring the local police, and this was a big scam going on a few years ago, or other law enforcement to arrest you immediately for not paying your taxes. All right? And if you ever get a call that you're not sure of, all right, and you say, I don't owe any taxes, and I have no reason to know, so you don't have to worry. But if you have something that you're not sure of, call 1-800-829-1040. That's the IRS number, 1-800-829-1040. And, call them and say, okay, I think I may owe some money, or I got a call. Here's my Social Security number. Here's my ID number. Tell me what's going on, and they will give you straight. But there's a lot of scams going on. They just arrested some people in India who were getting literally hundreds of millions of dollars a year from having people call and getting people to just give away money because they said, hey, the local police are going to come and arrest you right now for the money you owe.
Wow.
And that does indeed happen. I'm really glad that you brought that up. But again, irs.gov will give you some information. And by the way, we also have on our website, www.taxattorneycpa.com. We have information on our website from time to time in our newsletters.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking with Marty Davidoff of E. Martin Davidoff and Associates, there's definitely a lot to sort of break down, and I'll ask that you give your contact information out for folks so that they have it after this if they have more questions or if they want to maybe personally contact you and whatnot. Right now it's not really tax season as many people would sort of say and whatnot. Doesn't mean that you can't be thinking of these sort of things. Just if you have maybe one or two ways that you can, before you go, just protect yourself from these sort of things. I know you had mentioned a couple other things before here and there, but what are some specific ways that, I'll just keep it for personal, and maybe another time we can invite you back and talk more specifically about businesses and the taxes involving business. But in terms of just for ourselves right now, what are some ways that we can prevent ourselves from even accidentally falling into some of the traps or some of the cracks in the system that might cause the IRS to contact us for real?
Well, the answer is file a complete and accurate return and keep good records of all your stuff. Even if you are, hire a tax professional to prepare your tax returns, make sure you understand your return. One of the biggest problems is people don't read their tax returns because they say, oh, it's too complicated to understand. But you can read a tax return, and if there is a deduction on there for charitable contributions or medical, you know whether that or not that's legitimate. Some people, especially in inner cities, they prepare fake returns. They make up deductions. They make up things to get people to get the earned income credit fraud. And one of the best ways to do is to read the return and understand it. And if your preparer says, oh, it's too complicated, you won't understand, that's not a good preparer.
Okay.
Every American who has even a junior high school education somebody can explain to them what's on their return, and they should. If somebody tells them differently, then they're trying to scam them.
Good advice. Good advice. I really appreciate you, Marty, for coming on tonight. That's Marty Davidoff of E. Martin Davidoff and Associates. If folks want to reach out to you or your or your business as well, how do folks do that?
They can just call me at 732-274-1600, 732-274-1600, or they can text me at that same number. They can call or text.
Oh, wow, that's even better. You can even text, folks. So if you have a question, if you have something that you want to reach out to Marty Davidoff, you can go ahead and do that. We'll put that number on our social media pages in case you missed it as well. Thanks again, Marty. Definitely got to have you back on soon.
Keaton, thank you very much. Have a great day.
No problem. No problem.
You've been listening to a podcast of The Lounge with Keaton Nichols. Weekdays, 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. right here on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.